Section 2.3 is called equations, and it talks about this along with a few other things. Equation, we might have mentioned the other day. So an equation contains an equal sign, showing two things are equal. There's a couple of different types of equations. One is a numerical equation, which only contains numbers and operations, and then the other one's an algebraic equation. So algebraic equation has at least one variable and at least one operation, and it can also have numbers as well. So an example of a numerical equation could be like 3 plus 4 equals 7. An algebraic equation could be something like 3x plus 4 equals 8. Okay, as long as it has at least one variable in it, it's an algebraic equation. We're mainly just going to make sure you understand what these things mean, so that if they ask you to write an algebraic equation, you know how to do that, but I don't think we need to go into it in too big of depth. So the example it mentions in your book talks about a computer programmer that charges $50 per hour. If he works 3 hours, how much will he earn? So they wrote an equation, and before they wrote the equation, they defined their variable, which we talked about earlier in this chapter. This is defining the variable. It's picking a letter and telling what it represents. I like to say represent instead of equals, so let n represent the number of dollars Mr. Chu will earn. And so 3 times 50 equals n. It is an algebraic equation because it has a variable in it. And if you multiply 3 times 50 would be $150. The next thing they talk about is how we can translate numerical and algebraic equations from word sentences. We did pretty much the same thing in the last lesson, only we didn't have equal signs. So I'm not really worried too much about the translation here. I think you guys can handle that pretty well. And just notice the type of equations. We do have a few. These last ones are algebraic because of the variables that they have in them. The book mentions closed sentence is something that does not contain variables, and so those can be either true or false. Open sentence has a variable, or at least one variable, and open sentences are neither true nor false. So they give an example there, a plus 2 equals 7 is an open sentence. We're not going to worry about that too much. That's not really something we're going to focus on here. One thing that I will mention here, though, is this. If you ever see this equal sign with a line through it, that means is not equal to. One thing we do need to know about is what it means for finding a solution of an equation. So a solution is a value for the variable that makes the equation true. It's a number we could put in place of the variable that makes the equation work. Some equations could have more than one solution. The ones we're going to talk about for now mostly will only have one solution. But so if you look at this, they're asking us whether x equals 4 and x equals -5 are solutions of this equation. So what they did, they tried 4, they put a 4 back in place of the x. They substituted that in, and then they worked it out. So 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 plus 4 is 20. So that works. So 4 is a solution of this equation. And then they tried -5. negative 5 squared means negative 5 times negative 5 since it's in parentheses, which would be a positive 25. 25 plus 4 is 29. That's not equal to 20, so negative 5 is not a solution. So right after I mentioned to you that we're mostly going to be just dealing with things that have one solution, this equation actually is an example of something that has two different solutions. One thing to consider when you're looking at an equation is if you have a variable that has an exponent, whatever the highest exponent of the variable is, that's how many possible solutions you have to the equation. So this one, since you have an x squared term, that means this has two possible answers. So we just looked at the one we talked about that worked was 4. Another solution, the other solution to this equation would be x equals negative 4. So we'll just mention a couple things here just to make sure you guys are good with this. If we look at number 2, they want us to write an equation and tell whether it's numerical or algebraic. So 4 times negative 5, so 4 times negative 5 is equal to negative 20. Okay, so if you look at that, we don't have any variables in this, so this would be numerical. And that's it. It would be true if they asked us that, but they didn't. And then if we look at number 4, a number, so we can use whatever variable we want, divided by 7. You can write it like a fraction, or you can put divided by 7 next to it. Is usually means equals 21. And so this would be algebraic, because there's a variable in this equation. We go down to number 9. They're asking whether the given value is a solution of the equation. So for 9, what we would want to do is substitute a negative 6 in place of the x. So we can put a question mark above the equal sign because we're testing to see if this works or not. Negative times negative is positive. 18 equals 18. So we could say yes, this is a solution of this equation. And this one, if you'll notice, the x does not have an exponent, so that actually would be the only solution. That would be the only value we could put in place of x that would make this work. If we look at number 10, we want to see if this works when y equals 25. So we can put 25 in place of the y. And over on the left side, we could go ahead and just subtract those. And we would get 27. So at this point, we could use that thing we talked about a minute ago. We could say 27 is not equal to 25. And so we could say no, 25 is not a solution. And then finally, number 11, if z equals 2, we put a 2 in place of the z. So negative 36 divided by 2, negative divided by positive would be a negative, and that would be 18, so negative 18. And over here, notice the negative is out in front of the absolute value bars, so that needs to just come straight down. And then absolute value of 18, how far is 18 from 0, would be 18. And so that does work. So 2 is a solution. Z equals 2 is a solution of that equation. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of how to work with equations and solutions. Have a good day.